In 2014, our son, Bobby Caldwell, was sentenced to 12 years for involuntary manslaughter during an attempt to take his own life. After going to prison, he soon discovered, I think, as most people do, that little rehabilitation can be found in prison if you don't do it yourself. And so the journey to find rehabilitation began. At first, it started with writing as a form of expression, which I posted for him on Facebook, which gained a lot of popularity. So much that I created a website, which led to even more connections, and went to other forms of expression, resulting in a podcast. Along the way, though, it got some attention of some well-known people who offered their help and support. And through that, we found this wonderful giant support system. One of the things the podcast did was allow him to share his story and document his prison experience in real time. So people really know what it's like in there. It's important for Bobby to share his story so that others avoid making the same mistakes he's made and spare them from the pain. You know, we've never seen someone who hasn't been sent to prison in the past, who's never been incarcerated before, get a sentence of this kind. We did file a commutation in the beginning, but that was before all of his personal growth could be realized by the institution. So we thought we'd put together a few things that point to some of the clarity and self-worth he was able to find in prison. An easily digestible version of a picture of rehabilitation for the parole board, the governor, or anyone else who has someone in prison that they care about. The prison calls you're about to hear are taken from some old friends, new friends, and even a former inmate.
The feedback we're getting has to do with meditation or how Bobby looks at certain things now and how that's different than how he used to look at things. So I'd like to get into that. What's up, Bobby?
So I'm doing all right. And as you were saying, like, people have been asking about certain things, and that's inspiring, and it's cool, and it's also, I don't know, a lot of responsibility, I guess. But when I like, after I started making some personal growth, and like after some of the realizations I came to about life and perspective and, you know, all the important things, I wish I could tell my younger self these things. That's the driving factor for me wanting to share all these things with people. And I've been doing it through the prison system for the last couple of years. The fact that people are reaching out and like kind of thirsty for this stuff is cool.
When you're spinning, when you're walking laps, and one of the other convicts comes up to you and like, hey, yo, I heard you know about meditation. You know, why don't you tell me about it? You got like a prepared speech. You already know what you tell them. Why don't you tell the rest of us what you tell them?
I could give, I guess, maybe I could give the condensed version of it. But first of all, the technique. Before I tell them anything, I give them the basics about the sitting posture, how you hold your hands, tilt your chin down straight, the line's fine, the breathing technique and all that stuff. When you get good at meditating, when you quiet the mind enough from the static noise, you start realizing some of the deeper, more profound things about life. Our natural setting, our default mode is the primal one, the one that got us through evolution and has a super selfish, which understandably is for survival of the fittest type evolution. We have selfish, greedy, anger, lustful, hate, all those feelings. And then there's some of the higher things that I think have to be, first you have to quiet down the volume on that lower operating system to switch over to the other one. And that's what meditation's about, right? Quieting the monkey mind enough to where you're in control of your thoughts to an extent. And you understand them, where they're coming from, where they're going, what they're leading to. And so that's where meditation comes in. But the greatest realizations of my life have been gained meditating. And they're invaluable. And I figured it'd be nice to maybe at some point talk about some of those things that I've seen clearly with a calm, quiet mind. I've been able to understand my addiction more and my depression and all that stuff. Me and you've talked about that before.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's segue directly into the realizations that you yourself have been able to acquire through your meditation.
Well, I think one of the first profound ones was like understanding my addiction and where that came from in a more complete way. But one of the things meditation lets me do is trace back to like its root cause, like to strip all the nonsense away and find out like what's really going on. And for me, I realized addiction wasn't mine. Addiction was me self-medicating a deeper problem, which was depression. I feel like there's an incompleteness to us all that we all feel, and most of us try to fill that externally, right? Once I realized like those things that I was trying to fill that void with, those things don't stick to the sides of that void and fill it up. They just go in. It's never enough, always temporary, because they're all external things. And then I realized, this sounds so hippie-ish. I had to start doing like internal,
annoyingly,
find some sort. Yeah, it's so. What a painful existence to be a cynical who's also realized these like beautiful truths. I found stuff that abided, right? That was internal, that wasn't perishable externally and reliant on, people can walk out of your life, you can lose things, and drugs and alcohol and experience are never enough. And one of the main things I found like helping people and giving to people and being there for people, those things actually started to fill that thing where I didn't have that aching emptiness in my heart. And when I talk to you, if I can control if I'm a glass half full or glass half empty person, I'm going to be that other thing. I didn't realize how long it's been since I told anyone the full details, and also to a stranger. Like when I have told it to people, it's people I know and here I get comfortable with and trust. And when I tell it to a British dude who's a stranger, who there are, an unknown amount of people that are going to listen, it's daunting and it's super heavy, and it's still, I think, forever will be incredibly raw to me. And with telling this story during the interview the other day, I'm so close to it, and I'm so like guarded in that area because like I was kind of saying to you, it's not just my story, right? I don't own it. I'm not the sole possessor of it. It's Cash, it's Naj, it's Monica, it's her parents, it's my parents, it's my sister, it's everyone's story. And I feel some sort of like, I don't own it, right? So it's hard for me to take possession of it and tell it without like feeling all of them too. And going through that, it's like, with all the progress I've made, I have to relive like, oh, you dumb piece of shit. Look what you did. You dumb fuck. And it's always going to have happened. There's no changing it. And that's even now it's hard to tell a stranger or even think about by myself, let alone that. You know what I mean?
To me, it's like the worst thing ever could happen to you and has happened to you. And to come out, I mean, do you feel like that's the only way to survive is to try to turn it all around?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that I'm not concerned with surviving anymore. Surviving is what I was doing out there. I was just surviving. One of the most heartbreaking things about waking up to life, or whatever you want to call it, is realizing that I'd been like sleeping through it all, sleepwalking through it all, sleepworking through it all, whatever, and was just always fixated on this idealized version of where I would be mentally or socially or economically, and I was never in the moment, and I was always living for this idealized future or this glorified past. And in prison, you can definitely sink into that escapism, but like I said, I refuse to do that. So I'm definitely doing more than surviving. If this is one of my biggest reoccurring thoughts is, holy shit, I have to believe and I have to hope that it doesn't take this happening to someone for them to like wake up. So if there's any way someone could learn by proxy from my experience to like kind of wake up to the beauty of life, the mundane beauty of everyday life and relationships, then that's like my ultimate spiritual dream, if you will, is to like maybe a couple people like can hopefully it doesn't take to lose everything, because I had to lose everything to realize how beautiful life can be if you pay attention to it and focus on the positive instead of all the negative stuff.
One of the things that I think about a lot in here, there is this realization in here that, like, man, if I could have, like, reached these realizations without like barely surviving and hurting a bunch of people along the way about the way my brain works and what life's about and what's important and all this other stuff, if I could just go back, it's like one of my biggest wishes. So I've always had this I'm like, I wish I had someone in my life to tell me some of the things that I had to realize the long, painful, and hard way. And one of the few people that wasn't able to teach me about the deeper things, but I respected as like someone I could trust, knew what they were talking about if they said they did, was you. And you're always really good at teaching stuff. So when I broached this to you, I was like, that's something I think about a lot. Like, what would you tell your younger self? And in my specific case, it applies to real life because it's what I need to be able to tell my son, who I don't get to talk to anymore because our minds are so alike. And I can be that person for him. And so one of the ideas was, he's 10 now. If I don't use this platform as like at least 1 or 2 episodes to be a little message in a bottle to him, I don't get to talk to him like I should be able to talk to him and like I was able to for the last couple of years now. Because of that, I at least need to, I would like to put something out there so if he was to discover this, would see it, and this might be my only opportunity, so that's like one of the things I wanted to do with this is like, if you could go back, that hypothetical that a lot of people go through and talk to your younger self, what is it that you would find, worthy of imparting on your younger self or your kid that you can't talk to anymore?
Yeah, and this is something that I don't sit around and think about, but you've made a lot of progress, even though you're locked up and got it worse than anybody, me or anybody else that's listening. But you can still have a positive attitude a lot of times.
If Cash ever listens to this, and I would tell him, listen, kid, you're going to go through some emotional stuff. Cash has a lot that he's going to have to deal with. A lot, mainly put on him by my failings as a human being. And it just kills me. I'm just going to talk directly to him. This is what I want to say. Cassius, I love you. I miss you, and I love you so much that words can't express, and certainly a podcast won't do justice to. I miss you in ways that I didn't know was possible to miss someone, and I love you in ways that I didn't know was possible for someone to love someone. And I'm sorry that you've had to go through so much tough stuff at such a young age because of my failings as a man. That being said, after all that, I want you to know that I've done everything I can since then to be in your life and try to mitigate or maybe one day hope to be able to fix some of the things that happened, some of the things I did, and some of the things you and your sister, who I love. All of this applies to her too. I love her so much. That we'll be able to build a relationship. And one of the things that allows me to sleep decent at night is knowing faithfully that the bond that we were able to build in those few short years out there was, and this isn't wishful thinking, this is, and a lot of it took place, you won't be able to remember all of it, but that core feeling between me and you
is strong enough to withstand this and to at least have a place where we're going to be able to have some of those deeper conversations and questions, because I know you are me. Your brain is like mine, and I know you're going to have tons of questions, and we're going to have tougher conversations in the future, and I can't wait to be able to have them. And they're not going to be easy, but you deserve it, and I will be there for you. I will always be here for you in every way that's physically and emotionally possible for me to be. As you get older, you'll find out that I fought for you, and I did everything I could legally to have more time with you, to have structured time without infringing on whatever you have going on out there right now. I know you're in a tough position, and one thing I say about your grandma is that she loves you. Both of them do, but the one you live with now loves you, and in her own way, she's doing what she thinks is best for you. But our bond's strong. And I wanted to tell, and this is for you specifically, I know you won't be able to remember it, but this paints a great picture of why I'm faithful in our bond. And it's just a little small thing. So I used to be, it's happened a couple times, but I'd be sitting watching TV after work, and this one that's like so vivid in my mind. I was sitting on the ground with my back on the couch and my right arm propped up on the cushion of it, and your mom was in the kitchen making a cake. And I was just like scrolling through Netflix, just watching something. I don't even remember what it was. And you're running by playing with your sister. And I'm like, not even really paying too much attention. And out of nowhere, I think your sister runs upstairs and you're chasing her, and then you stop. And you intentionally walk over to me and you poke me on the shoulder. And I'm like, what's up? And you're saying, Dad. I'm like, what's up? But I'm still looking at the TV. And you're like, Dad. And so you make sure I look at you. And then we lock eyes. And as genuine and innocent and thoughtful and present as anyone's ever said this to me, he said, as if the thought just struck you when you were running by and you had to make sure I knew. You said, you're my best friend. And I said, you're my best friend too. And so, I love you, kid. This is, I'm sorry. I'm sure. So that's what this was about. That's what this message in a bottle was about. The off chance that you might find us one day. Just know I love you. That's it.
Why do you think that being in prison triggers this response to make sure that people know? I know that sounds like a dumb question.
I realized something about the nature of self-refinement, and that is there's diminishing returns for the amount of effort you put in based on how much you progress, right? So if self-refinement is like sculpting, it's like doing a sculpture out of marble, right? The first few, when you get a block of marble, you take a chisel and a hammer. Sometimes not even a chisel, just a hammer, and start banging pieces off. Those big pieces are easy to spot. You don't know exactly what the face is going to look like under there, but you know this corner has to come off. Boom, knock that corner off. So does this one. Boom, and you start. And those are gratifying. Those come easy and they're very noticeable. And that way with self-improvement, right? I'm an addict. Okay, that's easy. Just notice that the big chunk, knock that one off. Boom, and then it's like a little smaller chisel, knock that off. And then eventually you get all the way down to where it's not taking a second to break shit off, and it's not a big, giant, major,
obvious piece that you can just
fault. It's you're now with the tiniest little, you're scraping something with a chisel, or you're busting out the sandpaper or the cloth and just polishing this thing down for hours just to get this little curve out of it. And it's like the same thing with self-purification, with progress of self, and that is that once you get down there, you start going. You have less assure. You're less sure about this corner needs to come off, and it's like
it gets harder.
Does this look off-center to you? And it's like that's kind of where I'm at with some things, and not to say like I'm a master and I'm all the way done. The big ones are easy to spot, and the smaller ones. I've befriended a 21-year-old Egyptian kid named Abdul. He gets depressed. Like last night he asked me, he's like, do you ever get like depression? Like he doesn't even know what to call it. And I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. People look at that as a real weakness there. I'm like, for sure. I'm like, listen, everyone who thinks deeply gets depressed, bro. And you should.
Yeah.
It makes sense because you should have questions.
Yeah.
You should have, you know what I mean? And there should be moments where I said, just, shallow waters, they stay relatively still because they're so shallow. I said, you know what I mean? Like deep. So we have like deep conversations, and he's real curious about stuff. So I like him. I just read The Kite Runner, which is a great book, and I gave it to him, wrote a little inscriptions. Anyways, I asked Abdul, like, hey, bro, like, would you want to go with me to this study group? And he's like, yeah, I would. It'd be cool because he was real frustrated the other day, and
Let me ask you a question. How long is Abdul down? Just want to get a sense of what he's.
It's his first joint. He's
How long will he be? What is it?
Hold on, Abdul. Dude, how much time you got left? No, on your bit. How many did you do in county? All right. Yeah, he's got 2.5 years left. He's been in county for 3.5 though, so.
A little minute. Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but
I was just curious.
Right now, we're working on his reading skills. And I want to sum up too, and I think this will strike the group. There's only 5 or 6 of us in the group. Is that the power of language too, though, is to influence thought and thought to influence language. But I wonder how many are limited by the conversations they can't have with the people in their lives. That's one of the things I like about Abdul. He's young, but he's interested in those things. And he's interested to know the deeper things and to understand why. And he's not putting on a show, you know what I mean?
No.
Like, he's really, interested in those things. And that's, one of my favorite qualities in a person.
Yeah.
To be able to get excited about, I don't even know if the term is intellectual, or just talking about and thinking about and unraveling. That's why I love philosophy so much. Philosophy, the attempt to understand what this life is, what it means to be a human, and all that stuff.
You are mentoring, I hear.
Yeah, I feel like maybe some of my penance for my past deeds is, the viewers know this, who've been listening for a while. I had these realizations when I actually just decided to get my shit together, and I just had wished that I had someone to tell me some of these things. Someone who thought like me and looked like me or something, you know what I mean? So I don't know if it's intention I don't know. I end up meeting a lot of people who are of the same ilk, running from shit, but they're also got some brains and they're good down in there somewhere, you know what I mean? They're in pain, they're St. Jude type, like the Lost Causes, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And it's really hard. I don't really know how to talk about this without sounding like I'm just leading these guys to salvation, because it's not what it is, but it's me just going, hey, asshole, I was as bad as you, right? Which most of them don't think initially, because the way they kind of see me in here and they're like, oh, you don't have my problems. I'm like, no, I do have your problems. This is my story, right? I used to be real closed off about sharing my story until I realized, oh, that's just because I was insecure about it, and it was just selfish. It's selfish of me to hold it back when it can be the catalyst to someone else opening up or giving some of the things I'm saying at least some credibility in their mind, So, JC has been he's meditating, and I don't push any of this on people, Sure. But when we'll have some deeper conversations, and basically as interested as they are is as much as I'll engage. And one of his friends that he grew up with, kind of like your scenario, farm area, not real earth and whatnot. He's a good dude, man. He slipped some poetry to me.
Oh, really?
No one does that. No one's writing. And he's and it's real dark, and well, you can tell he's got some creativity, and he's got some brain, and I really like him, but he is just hell-bent on destructive.
Really?
You know what I mean? Self-destructive, not fighting people, but let me run away from everything type stuff.
So what you
I have this detachment for stuff like that, right? Where it's I'm kind of numb to I can't tie, like, I can't be super emotionally invested in every person that is like kamikazing their life,
right,
because I've had so many of my friends die, and Corey, the most recent, that there's like this numbness to it. And I was telling JC, I was like, yeah, Brown's gonna die when he gets out if he doesn't change his ways. And I was spinning with, like, this is like later in the day, I was spinning with, I'm like real, like I don't really, this is one thing that's surprise the viewers, I don't really beat around the bush with people. So we're spinning, I'm like, I think JC mentioned something to him, and he was like, what? He got all indignant. And so we were spinning, and I was like, yeah. He like brought it up as if like we were gonna have a discussion, but I was like, yeah, I figure you're probably about 75% chance of dying within the first 5 years after you get out. And it wasn't like dire or me being dark. I said it just like matter of factly. And he just kept trying to like plead his case as if to convince me. And I go, I don't case, like I know what I'm doing. I'm like, said every single one of my friends that's dead. So, you know what I mean? And I was like, listen, this isn't an argument to be won. This is my opinion. You're going to be dead within 5 years if you continue on this path. I still love you. Like, I was going to I'll spend more time with you now because you won't be here. But we ended up, like, really chopping it up yesterday and really, like, getting into it. He's, like, a deep thinker, man. I really like bro.
That through your meditations and your, I don't want to say newfound mental wellness, but you actively try to keep your mental health, on the good side. Something that you and I didn't even think about growing up. We didn't know it was possible. Right. Yeah. So due to those things, how has your perspective of life changed for once you return to society?
I was put in a position where, because of a selfish victim despair of like depression mentality, I ended up trying to kill myself and just created a storm of unintended consequences that landed me in here. So I immediately swore off, like, I don't care what happens, I will never give in to that mentality again. So, okay, what's next? What do I do? How do I start figuring my brain out and what's going on? And between bouts of sobbing and just a haze of just disbelief, I meditated and started to unravel some of the knots in my brain, and along with the whole complex thing of realizations I had, one of which is helping other people. God, it still sounds so 12-steppy, but like being positive and expressing love and sharing in love and relationships, and what those acts.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Helped me a lot. So that's one of the things that's really been a big deal, and I'm going to carry that through to when I get released.
And I know he told you I was his first monkey, and pretty much like I changed the way I thought because of him, and the way I view things or how I approach certain situations with people, you know what I mean? And yeah, he's a good dude. He's always, I'd say, has my best interest in hand, always trying to steer anybody, in the right direction. And yeah, he's a good dude. But he's a good dude for sure.
One of the things that happens in here, especially with us in here, that the interactions are so superficial that aside from being like a mentor, when I was writing all the people I was mentioned earlier back last night, 2 of them are Chef and Taylor, Tay-Tay, that got out. We had some conversations, and and where they're intelligent but troubled, but also well-intentioned people who, if you're just willing to interact and have genuine conversations with people and listen to them and like give your perspective and all that type of thing that's really missing in here, which would think would be like the easiest thing, the most basic, simple thing to provide for people, has been like that has been a reward. Like when Chef or anyone writes me out there, and not in a way they're writing me like, thank you for everything you did, but Chef mentioned mentioned, like, hey, man, some of those conversations we had right before I left, like, really changed the way I thought about some things. And I'm not saying like I was like divulging these things to him. I'm saying like we come to these realizations and conversations we're having together, you know? And that is one of the meaningful things. And, you know, without being in this hellhole, I wouldn't be able to meet and learn from them as well, you know? So I guess if we're doing silver linings, I guess that's one.
There are hundreds of prison phone calls with Bobby highlighting all the wonderful work he's doing, not just for himself, but for others. And we thank you for taking the time to listen.